Went live now. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for making the time to join our panel discussion on driving DevOps maturity in large enterprises. Let me introduce myself first. This is Sri Nivas. I'm the global head of DevOps practice and co-head for digital engineering at Qualitest. I'm a very vivid DevOps practitioner and a DevOps evangelist. Have experience driving DevOps transformation in several organizations. I'm really looking forward for the conversation today. As you all know, DevOps transformation is a multi-year journey for any enterprise. And it's also with an objective of continuous improvement, absorbing DevOps capabilities across the enterprise and then maturing the DevOps practice as well. So we are very excited to have our panelists today who have deep experience in driving DevOps transformation within their organizations. I'm going to introduce Bouchra Atoubi Galucho. She's the VP of DevOps and Quality Engineering at Health First. We also have Faisal Farooqui, who is the VP of Application Development at Multiplan.
Hello.
And we have Vikul Gupta, who's our CTO, the Qualitest CTO for Americas. Thanks, everyone. And Faisal would probably start. Can you start with a brief introduction about yourself and a little bit about your background? And then we can go to Bouchra and then to Vikul and then kick off the panel discussion.
Sounds great, Sri. Good morning, everyone. My name is Faisal Farooqui. I am a Vice President of Information Technology at Multiplan. It is a pleasure to be part of the conversation on DevOps. And thank you for Sri and the panel for having me on it. I've been with Multiplan for 22 years next month. That number is not too impressive when you come to Multiplan because, we have a very long retention rate of our employees. In fact, Multiplan is a certified best places to work 2 years in a row.
Awesome.
I just want to maybe set up a quick background on this. So our CIO came up with a vision for the organization 1.5 to 2 years ago. The vision being that we need to be a client-centric organization, we need to be a product-centric organization within IT. And we had restructured the organization to meet those goals. So my role really is, to represent IT from the perspective of network services line of business. So those goals brought in some unique challenges for us. Number one, we needed processes in place that would allow us to deliver a faster time to market. We needed to put processes in place to allow us to do this at scale. The answer to that has been DevOps for us. We have been practicing and maturing in this area of DevOps for the last year and a half. I would love to share the insights that we've been able to gather over that the time frame. Things that worked for us, things that we're struggled with, and things that we still need to achieve. Right? It is, as you said, Sri, it's a multi-year project. It's a constant learning experience, and really want to highlight where it's doing well for us so far. My expectation with the panel discussion is to kind of have a frank discussion on DevOps, the capabilities, what the panel has learned over their experience with it, and how we personally can learn from that and apply that here at Multiplan.
Thank you. Thank you, Faisal. Really appreciate it. Bouchra, over to you.
Thank you, Sri. I'm going to try to probably be brief. So I am, as Sri mentioned, work for Health First. Health First is the #1 health plan in New York City area, the boroughs, including Westchester and Nassau County. I joined Health First for about 6 years. I'm working on my 7th year right now, so not 22 years yet, Faisal. But I'm getting there. I think it's a great place to be part of for mainly 2 reasons. So the first reason that anybody who works at Health First or is part of the New York community will tell you about us, and Health First is our mission. So we serve the underserved. So it's a great mission. We all work that is felt deeply from up all the way to all the employees. So we're really proud of the work we do in our community. And the second reason is the size. It's almost for a technologist, like we're all here, is that we like to be in a sweet spot from it's not too big to be stuck with the red tape and you can't try out and play around for things. And it's also not too small to not be able to afford trying out new things and technologies. And that part has been definitely driven by a great CIO that we have that has similar to what Faisal mentioned as part of the digital transformation that we had about now 4 or 5 years ago that our CIO set up. We needed new ways of doing things. So my area, I was originally just in charge of quality assurance, quality engineering, release management, change management, deployment management. But when you talk about all these areas, they're all, how can we minimize risk and deliver faster? So it's basically, I talk a lot about in QA really trying to manage risk and get things faster and safely to production without creating a lot of disruption. And of course, as you start going fast, and it's not a choice, there is, I am going to probably mess the saying. There is a saying that our CIO keeps repeating, which was actually said by a quote from Justin Trudeau, the president of Canada, where I'm going to say the meaning because I'm not good at remembering and quoting people. It's just basically is we're going fast, but this is the slowest we're ever going to be compared to the future. So it's only going to get faster. So in that realm, everybody had to look inside of their areas and say, well, QA is an area and release, and it's all process and things that usually people think of as slowing down. So the answer was, how can we get into automated pipelines? How can get, DevOps solutions like that? And that's how our journey in the DevOps area started about 3 to 4 years ago. We will talk. So I'm hoping today we're going to share our interesting and, some of it hopefully helpful to the panel and also to our audience. But I'm also here to learn from our panel and from our audience. So I can bring it back here to Health First and see how is that going to help. So glad to be here among everybody.
Thank you, Bouchra. Over to you, Vikul.
I'm not going to try to even compete with Faisal and Bouchra on number of years. I look the youngest, I know, so I'm just going to use that doubt. I'm a lifelong engineer. I started my career as a Java developer, then EJB. I built soft switches. I see Faisal smiling. I saw in his profile that he also worked in EJB. So Faisal, I started working on EJB when it was only 2 years old. So, but very proud to be an engineer. So from a digital engineer, I moved on to an operational engineer when I joined HP. I spent 14 years with HP, primarily focusing on cloud, service management, application management, and so on. And then from HP, with HP also gave me the opportunity to start working with cloud. You name a company, I would have worked with them. In that capacity, I was the worldwide CTO for DevOps. And then from HP, I went to Cognizant, where So I had the dev, I had the ops, but I was missing the quality aspect. And those of you have done development, quality is something which you never think of, right? You assume. So I was like, that's a gap. Let me learn about it. And I joined Cognizant and I learned about it. And then I loved it so much that I picked a very niche company, which is Qualitest. And I was like, I'm going to influence what we do here. So that's what I'm doing right now. What I have worked in DevOps for quite some time, and I bring engineering into how we do in DevOps, right? Whether it is the quality aspect, whether it is the development aspect, whether it is the operational aspect, right? Bouchra talked about shift left. I think Faisal, that was an initiative on your side too. How do you shift left and then bring agility, bring efficiency in releasing products faster without compromising quality? So I'm going to share my experiences, learn from my fellow panelists, and I'll be very, very interested as to what do you see the future of DevOps, right? It is more than automation now. How does AI come into the picture? So those are the thoughts which I'll be very, very interested in as we move forward with this panel discussion. Back to you, Sri.
Thank you, Vikul. Appreciate. Thanks, everybody. So we're going to kick off the panel discussion now. For all the participants, there is a comments area that you can see. You can post your questions there. We will make our best attempt to answer those questions along the way. And so for the first discussion topic that we're going to have, I would love to know how your organization is structured to deliver new DevOps capabilities, and what's the process you use to mature DevSecOps within the organization. Bouchra, would you like to go first?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, our DevOps journey started 3-4 years. I think probably 4 years. I like to think it's only 3, so to show the progress we've made. And of course, like any journey into trying to transform the way you deliver software or a product, we learned along the lines and we adjusted. We are an agile organization where we follow safe agile methodology. So we are organized into, of course, release trains. We call them programs. And that structure, so we're agile, and then, of course, the next thing that comes into mind, in agile, then your CI/CD, and then, of course, DevOps. So the journey for DevOps with us has been, really who is in charge of DevOps? And that could be, so the beginning of, first, so we created this platform team that included engineers and people from everywhere. It included people from my team, from, automation team, included people from the application team, included people from operations team, and security, of course. So that started, and it has a great vision. The problem that we had is these are people also with their day job. So they were pulled in, I think, except for a few, they were not fully dedicated to the DevOps. And the learning lesson after a few tries is that we needed a dedicated team. So that was the first try. And I'm trying, hopefully, anybody who's going to start the journey can skip that part and not do that. Or if you've been there, I'm sure you understand totally what I'm saying. So the next approach was, well, we needed to have a dedicated team. So we created a small dedicated team, and we were still seeing a slow adoption and a slow movement into the pipeline and how we were progressing. And of course, that comes with an impatience from the business side and the execs. So each time we're talking, so they hear a lot about, so one thing you have to manage is the culture outside of the IT, the people who understand what DevOps mean. There is this language that we in IT tend to think everybody understands what an automated pipeline, but what is it? So we had to learn to have an internal language of the pipeline and, an external when we're talking and providing updates. And that language also needs to include metrics. I'm sure at some point we'll get that free. So So we had to learn that the hard way, but it's great. It's part of the journey. And then that small team then started becoming very overwhelmed by the work because we have about 13 programs. So that we needed, to work with. Then one learning experience is these DevOps platform people did not have a knowledge of all the applications and the platforms. So they were really good about the DevOps infrastructure and pipelines, but they didn't understand what it means to work on a claims application or an enrollment and billing. Again, I'm talking about our health first systems. So, which means they needed time from these programs and the application owners, which that was not. So we got into, again, a constraint by resources. So the last thing that we did that seems to be working for us, which is I call it the version in our DevOps journey, it's really having a federated model.
Mm-hmm.
Federated model is our platform team is still there. They're building. We name it the highway. I would even call it an auto. What is the fast highway that Germans use?
Autobahn.
Autobahn. That is like an autobahn. We're building the infrastructure for it, and we're building it in a composable way. We can talk later about it. It's kind of a Lego concept. And then the application owners come in, and that's the federation part. And then you come in, and then you automate your application side, and then you plug it into the pipeline. So it's almost if you're trying to imagine you have this autobahn that goes fast. So you need to build really either fast self-driving cars that can go in it. So you're still missing the two to get to the destination faster and with non-compromising, of course, security or quality. So that's our journey. I'm sure we're going to get to the lesson learned and things that worked or not, but that's, overall our journey so far in the DevOps.
Great. Thank you, Bouchra. Faisal, would you like to chime in as well?
Yeah, sure. I think Bouchra really covered it. The only other thing that I would like to add, particularly from the structure that seems to be working for us now, has been with a very clear definition of our coaching area, our COE, Center of Excellence around DevOps. So we've made an investment in that area. We're building institutional knowledge within that area. And that's helping us sort of bring more and more teams into the folds of DevOps. So that's one key, I think, that's been working for us. The other, what Bouchra said, we have put a high emphasis on engineering our pipeline or the Autobahn, right? So we have dedicated team or a group that's being run to work with the various product delivery teams to understand their requirements and use that to really build out the pipeline. In the words of our chief architect here, it is the single most important piece of software that we are developing here at Multiplan. And its mission is to really accomplish what the overall goals have been set by our CIO, which is faster time to market, deploy with quality. Those two areas I think are critical from an organization perspective. And then other areas like information security, bring that in to your pipeline. So now it's all about the pipeline, what it does for us, right? It's there to deliver code with quality, deliver code with security, generate the right kind of metrics that we can read from and that'll help us improve. But ultimately, I would say these are like organizational pieces, but it really all comes from a culture of continuous improvement. If we focused on that, we work collectively as a larger enterprise, even though there are different areas within the organization that does COE, that does pipeline engineering, InfoSec, but they all come and then product delivery, but they all come together when it comes to achieving success with DevOps.
Thank you, Faisal.
If I just from a structure perspective, I completely align with what Bouchra and Faisal said. But from a TCOE, from a COE perspective, one structure which I see very successful, especially in DevOps. DevOps is something which cannot be responsibility of 5 or 10 people. It is a responsibility of everyone, dev, QA, ops, everyone. But you still need, so we've seen a hub and spoke model work really well across organizations. It's neither centralized, it's not decentralized, it's a hybrid. So the hub is where you define best practices, you experiment, you identify tools so that you are rationalizing, right? Otherwise, everyone will use everything, but then when you bring them together, you struggle on integration points and so on. So the hub is focused on that. And spoke is every LOB, every project team will act like a spoke where you make sure that it's not them, it's you also who have to contribute. So when we talk about a pipeline, they'll create generic pipelines, but then project-specific pipelines are the responsibilities of the spoke. I've seen that structure work really, really well because when you have centralized COEs, then it is them versus us, right? Many times it's throwing over the wall. And DevOps is all about breaking walls, right? Between dev and ops and between project teams and centralized teams. So I thought that was another aspect which I've seen being successful across different customers.
I agree. If I can intervene, I'm sorry, I don't know. If I can just add one thing on that is, it's true, but also in order to have a successful hub versus
Spoke.
In the spoke, you need to make sure that there is a DevOps structure inside of the spoke. When you don't have that, somehow the work or the backlog for the DevOps pipeline gets deprioritized because these spokes, they have their day-to-day and priorities, and all the DevOps have you get into this dilemma. But you're right. That's probably the best way to get out of both sides.
Yes, Bouchra. I think it's the DevOps expertise within the spokes, and also the domain knowledge and the application knowledge. We need to bring individuals with that kind of caliber so that they're able to take the capabilities that are added to the Autobahn, customize it, and roll it out, right? Most important thing is rolling and coaching and reinforcement. That's the biggest part of any DevOps transformation. So these spoke leaders can then, concentrate on working with these different application teams and maturing DevOps within their domain and have that as objective. I think that becomes key.
Yeah, and feed back into the hub as well based on their
feedback.
I don't know, like this, either I read this somewhere or if I haven't, then you can attribute this to me, but DevOps dies in silos. So if you have silos within your organization, it's not going to work. So I think that's what I think, Vikul, you said, you break those early on.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we're going to get to that aspect of what's after, and I'm not talking from a technology or a process. I'm talking once you put a pipeline live. So now you have a fully adopted and ready. It doesn't end there.
Yep. No.
One of the mistakes, of course, I would call it opportunities and lesson learned, is that especially when you have the hub and once they both put it live, it becomes, if there is during the deployment something happened, who's gonna jump in and fit him? So there is that also. Think of the right week we shift left. We think a lot of it. We've been really good at it, hopefully. But that shift right is that even once we put it live and it's running, there is still an operation side of the DevOps pipeline. Yeah.
Thank you, Bouchra. We'll move on to the next subject. We all understand that culture is the most difficult aspect of any transformation. And just like to hear from the panelists on what strategies did you all adopt to affect culture change. Faisal, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure, Shri. So I attribute a lot of this to our CIO and our senior leadership. We have a well-established cultural norms within Multiplan. We call it our IT acts. Accountability, continuous improvement, teamwork, and service excellence. So that's a motto. That's not something that we talk about at the the higher levels or higher echelons of Multiplan. It's baked in all the way through. So what that does when we talk about DevOps particularly continuous improvement, is that it sets us up with that mindset to achieve better, right? And that's really the cornerstone of DevOps. You never stop. You never say, okay, I'm satisfied. Now I think we're in a good spot, so let's end this program. It's continual process. So from a culture perspective, we feel like we have that within the DNA of the organization. And a lot of that, and I think this topic came up when Bouchra mentioned it early on as well, is that we need effective outreach to our business leaders, our executives. We do that as an IT organization and really showcase the value of what DevOps will bring to the table, and then we have consistent touch points with these leaders in terms of how we are doing with this. The other thing I think from a culture perspective I want to point out is that it's not, again, driven something top down. It really needs to be something that is is propagated at a root level as well. So when we are talking to developers, we want to make sure that they're completely enabled, the teams are enabled, that they have the right tool set, that they have that they are part of discussions where if their life is not getting better on a day-to-day basis, they can reach out to the COE and help communicate where the issues that they're facing. So it's really like a grassroots level effort we need to encourage within the teams. I would say like that's kind of our key so far with from a culture perspective.
Faisal. Vikul, is there anything else you would like to add?
First of all, very beautifully put, Faisal. I'm going to steal the ACTS aspect. I had written down, and I was like, everything I said, he just summarized it in 4 key words. So, first of all, great insight. See, for everything, Faisal, you said, I would strongly focus on one aspect. Right? Gartner did not even have culture, by the way, 4 years back. They had people, process, technology as key 3 pillars for DevOps. They added culture 4-5 years back because most of the failure was because you had everything in people, process, technology, but still DevOps was not successful because they were missing the culture aspect. Now, I feel that is important because think of your kids, right? Like I have a 17 and a 20-year-old. If I say this is how it has to be done, do they agree? They will not, but they won't do it. It's the same. It's the exact same. So you have to explain why DevOps, what does it mean? Get them on board, start small, and then. I think the other aspect is common sense. Pre and post DevOps. What common sense means, that definition will change with enablement and everything. Continuous feedback and continuous improvement are the key, I think. If you go Google it, people will say automation first, collaboration. Those are great tidbits 8-9 years back. Right now it is about continuous improvement, listening to the feedback, and finding ways. Right? Initially, DevOps was about manual to automation. And from now we have automation. Then what? This is where AI comes in. This is where DevOps transforms into DevOps aspect, a smart DevOps aspect of it. So you're continuously looking. If you release that 6 months cadence, now 3 months, then 1 month, from 1 month to 2 weeks, 2 weeks to 1 week, 1 week to 3 days, 3 days to daily, and from daily to 6 hours, 3 hours, 1 hour, continuously improve. I think that's the key from a culture perspective.
Great, thanks. Anything from you, Bouchra, to add?
No, I echo everything these 2 experts have just said. I would just say one thing that for us from a culture, which is huge, again, and that's the toughest part, by the way, I'm sure everybody will agree, is getting alignment from at every level, up, down, middle, to the developer, to the testers, to the security guys, getting alignment into what is it in for me? Like, why am I spending? I've been doing it. Like one of the comments you'll hear a lot of you guys there, we've been doing it and we've been fine.
Right.
way. Why
Right.
do I need to change? What is it in for me? Yeah, if the expression goes. And one of the things we learned is really kind of put in metrics a little bit, because sometimes these metrics will speak volume and put a lot of words to rest, because you sound like you're preaching. And these are engineers, they don't have time. There is a huge backlog next to them. The last thing is changing and adding more stuff to them. But it's basically starting small and then showing the benefits to them. So to a leadership, you could talk metrics like DQIs, or if you go to the developer, show them how much less testing or things that they have to invest in, and how the things are going to involve how many less incidents. So giving them metrics that speak and success criteria that show them that this is really not as huge effort as what they're doing right now, and speaking to each level the right language, and leveraging the right metrics to them, has been key to getting people on board. Because it's one thing to build the Autobahn. If there are no self-driving cars that go there, then it's just useless. And that happens. That's part of the process you go through, that you go through that phase. So trying to do more of a sales and communication, and trying to get people to understand why are we doing it. It's just something Bouchra woke up in the morning and say, hey, the fun thing now is DevOps. Let's do it because Netflix and Amazon are doing it. You have to look at your environment. We're not Netflix. We not Amazon. We have legacy systems. So, these people are dealing with day-to-day challenges. We have to really be very empathic. Empathy in while adopting DevOps is huge, and that will help you.
Yeah, thanks, Bushra. I think one of the other things that I've done in organization is identify what we call change agents. Right now, Faisal, we have worked at Multiplan. We have Dave Adams of the world, or Martins. Now there are individuals that are key, that are very eager to change and to incorporate change as well, and push that within the organization. We try to identify those change agents, make them part of these core team, and give them all the arsenal that's required, that where they can go and impact change within their circle, within their influence,
Yeah.
and make it happen as well. So that it's not the senior leadership that's talking about this, but there are other people that people can relate to, also have incorporating change within the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think I think Vikul, you had mentioned that you start small. Right? You don't wanna like just boil the ocean with this one. You start small, but then to your point also, Shri, you start with a group where you feel that there's a potential for success. You
Yes.
want to get success early on. If you don't get success early on, this path becomes harder as you go along it. So
Correct.
get the right people involved. Keep it small and stay focused.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll move on to the next subject. We all understand everybody is interested in outcomes, right? So my question is, did your DevOps transformation journey help you release faster and reduce production incidents? What were some of the outcomes you saw from the DevOps transformation? Bushra, you want to go first?
Yes, it did, and exactly we started small areas, like getting the quick wins, because we made the mistakes that, for example, we thought about if we go to our payment, and so that was really complex, and then we kind of went back, and as we onboarded those small area, we actually started. We had our measurement. So our existing, we always have DQI, which is our delivery quality index, which is basically it measures how many incidents you created as part of your change or your release. So in the areas where we have DevOps enabled and are fully on the pipeline right now, we saw a reduction of, so we had a 0.0, if I go back to the metrics in front of my eyes, 3% of for our DQI, which is really, really low compared to the ones that are right now not on the pipeline. So that was one when I talked about trying to communicate values and quick wins to the teams who are not on the pipelines. That was huge when we showed just those numbers.
Yeah.
So we measured that. We also measured the change. So we show them next to each other. So our change, which is really our velocity, we're delivering more change, and we actually reducing, going to really almost no impact into our production. And that was like the first time I remember we shared that. It was really great to see. That same chart has been showcased in different venues and meetings, and it's been the biggest sales to other teams. Like, this is you know, in the future looking at that. So I think that's the metric that was very helpful to us.
Okay, great. Thank you. Vikul, is there anything you would like to add?
No, I think releasing faster, releasing more, without compromising quality are the key outcomes every CIO would want to drive from DevOps transformation. Now, production incidents should go down, but your incidents or your test failures or your problems or defects or whatever you want to call them should happen early in the life cycle.
Early, yeah.
I think that's the key. So I completely agree with what Bouchra said there.
Faisal, any other?
Yeah, I want to add something to this one. I totally resonate what Bouchra said, you know, and I'm looking at one of the slides that we'll call it Dave Adams slide, because that's something that's been shared a lot within our organization as well. So within a matter of 2 quarters, where this team sort of started the work and, you know, from in Q1 and then between that and Q3, what we've seen is that the team's overall feature-related work that they would do, along with any kind of run the business work, so real work that the team's doing was like at around 50% of their capacity was actually delivering value. They were able to take that from 50% to nearly 70%. With 2 weeks of engagement. 2 quarters of engagement, right? Their bugs percentages went from 12% to 7%. Their deployments, now this is without, you know, CI/CD in place, they would spend about 18 to 20% of their time just doing deployments. That's a major chunk. In 2 quarters, we see that shrink to about 12%, 12 to 13%. Now, what that suggests is that there is concerted benefit that the product team is getting from it and the business stakeholders are getting from it. Less defects, more feature work, and you know, what's not to love about it. So we're definitely seeing that, and we're seeing that in all the teams that have been part of this. The needle will move a little slow in the beginning, and patience is the name of the game. But if you stand firm and keep going on, you will see the transformation.
Very absolutely right, Faisal, because, you know, we did see in Dave's slide, right, that initially when they started to move faster, they were spending more time on, you know, preparing for the release. But then once they start to use the automation and other features around releases, then they start to see the decline, and the team's getting used to the whole process itself, moving faster. So it's initially an uptick, and then it starts to go down.
If I can I jump in a little bit, because again, as you guys, I'm very passionate about this piece specifically of how people can see the benefit and then adopt it. One big thing, so yes, speed and quality, of course, and it's all why we do this and why without the DevOps and the automation, the thing that why we have slow releases, deployments, and testing and cabs and stuff is because we're really trying to mitigate this risk of disruption, right? Of the new change. What the pipeline and the DevOps allow you is, of course, treat things early on. So the whole concept originally, remember the word DevOps, the fact you're introducing operation way early. Usually in your traditional, they come in, even in agile, they will still come in late. So when everybody shift left, so you can emphasize the shift left aspect of DevOps, gets people engaged early. So that automatically addresses the risk of slow and a selling point. So if you're talking to your business, one thing your business are always going to come to IT. I need things and I need it faster. You guys are slow. Why do I have to wait for your monthly release? And I say that only release and change management. That's the biggest question I get asked, and so is my release and change management director. He would tell you. So we created with the DevOps, we created this fast release paths. So if you are on the pipeline, plus you have composable application, you are on the JETS path. So the JETS, that's fast. So that gives you don't have to go to duplicated environment. You don't have to join other releases. You can just fly through the whole process because you basically minimize all the risk that goes with that, those processes that we go through. So think of so our slowest path is actually a kite. Anything legacy still has to go through cab, and then the jet is really the top one where you can bypass a cab. You can just fly through it. So hey, you want to be a jet or you want to be a kite?
Sure.
You pick.
That's a great analogy. Thank you, Bouchra. That's very beautiful thought there. Appreciate it. So, now that you brought the question about the business stakeholders, right? How do you kind of bring them into the transformation journey, right? Because what happens is when you start the DevOps transformation, you're now asking your teams to kind of dedicate some of their time away from what they are producing for your business to understand, to observe the process, to get the skills that they need to get to a better productive window, right? So how is that communication happens with the with your business stakeholders, and if you can throw any insights into it, that'll be great. And Faisal, would you like to go first on that?
Sure, Shri. Yeah, that is a big challenge, right? We want to bring the business stakeholders along for this DevOps journey, and I think we talked about this earlier as well. We have to show them the benefits. We have to talk about what the benefits are, and we have to show that we are meeting those, the criteria that we've set for us early on. What are the benefits? We're going to have like faster time to market, increased deployment frequency. The team I was talking about just now used to do 3 releases a year, and now they're doing. I'm just making this up. They're getting about like 1.5. I think that's
Yes,
releases
exactly. A month
per month, right? So that's a huge change in terms of where we were and where we are now. So when you go to the business stakeholders and you say, we'll deploy more frequently, but then when you go back to them and say, show that we are actually doing it, they will understand the value. In fact, they would be the first ones to say, hey, this is quite impressive. We haven't seen this kind of performance before. So deployment frequency, the quality that's associated with our releases, we go back, we talk to them and say, look, this is where we were and this is what we were able to achieve now. So it's what I'm trying to say really is that it's a conversation, and it's a constant conversation with the business stakeholders. And also we need to communicate to them with transparency. We may not always get wins. One thing we were talking about is like, the team spending more time doing deployments. And we had to consistently tell them that, yes, I know that it's, we used to do this once in 4 months, but now that we're doing it every month, it's taking more and more time from the team to get those deployments out. But things will get better. and this is what we're doing so that we can get things in a better state. And continuing to have the conversations with them, even when you don't have really impressive stats to show, will be the right thing to do, because it opens up transparency in the communication. And then as they're as we've been communicating clearly with them, they will see progress, even though they may not have seen progress at one time. Keep highlighting the wins. That's the big thing. Like you get a little win, get in front of them, highlight those wins. It gives from a team's perspective, it gives them recognition to the work that they've been doing, as well as it feeds back into the overall DevOps program.
Very aptly said, Faisal, right? Because that's a great motivation for your teams as well, right? As they hear from business, and those encouraging words from the business also matters to keep the transformation momentum going, because it's a multi-year journey.
Yeah, it's patience and perseverance. Like that's needed in our communication with the stakeholders.
Thank you, Faisal. Anybody else would like to share any thoughts?
I think Faisal said it all. The only thing I would add on top is business stakeholders care about business. What is business? It's about user retention, market capture, and things like those. So while release frequency is important, but release stability is equally important.
Yes.
Is the release stable? Are you introducing defects into production, which will lead to you losing customers? I remember Obamacare when it launched, without naming a customer, right? Like they released faster, but they lost 65,000 clients a day. At that time, we could have gone back and said, give us 10 billion and we'll fix it. He would have given it to us.
Yeah.
So in this digital era, this digital world where you're directly interacting with customers, of course, you need to release features faster, but you also need to make sure that you're not breaking any functionality, you're not introducing any bugs. So when you go and explain this to to the business stakeholders, cover both aspects, that we are going to do more, the same from a payload perspective, feature perspective, but at the same time, by doing this, we are going to make the release much more stable than it was before. Bouchra talked about 0.02, 0.0, like this is the level which DevOps allows you to do from a quality perspective, and that's the end goal.
Thank you, Vikul.
I think going back to your original question, I think, Shri, which was, how do you handle and be mindful of the business time into, adapting? I would say, first of all, 2 points that we don't see that as a problem because we are agile safe. So the model really, the programs and the release trains, they have POs, product owners that handle that. So when they're interacting as part of the pipeline work, it's really the business. We don't take a lot of the business time at all. So they don't see that aspect, just kind of to close that point. So if you're in agile safe, that's not going to be the issue. But now to the point that both Faisal and Vikul were making about the selling points, it's tremendous the point that Vikul was making about directly point. So we're taking, for example, we're healthcare. If you take the way we do our claims, we process our claims, which is something our business understand very well, especially our business operations. If you go from the old days, how we were doing it, and how through the digital transformation and a DevOps model, we're really trying to handle how many benefit changes we can do as standard changes. We don't have to do a manual, regression. We don't have to go, and we basically share the metrics of look, and we used to have monthly. So this, when I'm talking jets, it's on demand. The DevOps pipeline is actually allowing, and whenever you're done, is it a day, 2 days, a week, you can go. Whenever the code is ready, you go to production, you're done. So basically, when we show the volume of the changes that were done just on the benefit side, that speaks their language. So that means we made this many changes that usually would would in the old days involve business operation folks, and then we'll also introduce a lot of rework because of the quality, and they'll do a lot of rework and they'll have to adjust. So now it's two things. We're replacing these systems with digital platforms that actually are going to make these transactions directly connected to the consumers. So the back, that operation team that usually was the buffer for the technology and fixing things, so you're bringing, not only you're not leveraging them upfront into the DevOps building, but you're also making their lives an operation, business operation, I'm not talking about IT, much easier, faster, to let the business think of what makes my customer better. How can I solve the next business problem, or make it, put us on a different ground and competitive ground? How can we grow, rather than them dealing with just operation, which is basically all the problems technology usually would send them back. So if you can translate those technical wins into those terms, I think that goes to what Vikul is saying.
Great. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think one of the things that the business is always worried about, the predictability, right? So we commit to a certain time frame by which we want to deliver some of the features, but as an IT organization, it's not very predictable. And I think a lot of things we do with the automation, with the process changes, process optimization, culture changes that we introduce with DevOps transformation helps you become predictable, because you're shifting left a lot of things. You're not finding things towards the end. You're trying to bring it forward, and makes you predictable as well, which is a big selling point for the clients.
Actually, I want to add one thing to that, what you just said. So there are like these salient benefits of DevOps. We get those benefits all the way through, but we need to amplify those benefits to our business stakeholders, even though, it's not an issue. For example, we had a requirement coming in, and then when the requirement was sort of reviewed, and it went through our a TDD pipeline or a unit test pipeline, we found that this rule that was added was incompatible with another rule that was out there. Now we're talking about hundreds of rules, so it would be very difficult for us to sort of catch that in the requirement. But once it was coded, very quickly run through, it was found that this is conflicting with some other rule. Now we would obviously catch that at that stage and then resolve it by going back to the business stakeholders. But here what we want to do is we want to say, hey, look, DevSecOps shift left actually caught this issue way at the time before it really became a problem in production. So those things that we sort of will take for granted longer term, you don't want to take them for granted early on, and use that maybe as another way to go back to your business stakeholder and say, see, this is working, and here's the benefit. So
thanks for that real life example, Faisal. It was really good. Thank you. Okay. So if this question is around, if there's one single aspect from the transformation approach that you took for the success of the DevOps transformation, what would that be? If anybody could highlight, that'd be awesome. Faisal, would you want to take that first?
Sure. I think we kind of talked about it. Vikul brought up start small. Right. Start with a team where you feel like you would have a high likelihood of success. Then you replicate that success. What you learned from that team, you replicate it. So what we've done is we've sort of, did a quarterly program, working with you guys on Qualitest, where we started engaging some of the progressive teams early on. And then that formula we kept replicating to other teams. So what happens with that sort of a model is that you're seeing some early success, and that kind of helps you define the path in the future. Early success is a great indicator for future success. I would just stop there.
Thanks, Faisal. That's absolutely right. Start small, and get some wins right off the bat instead of waiting for a long time. So
I can add to that, which I totally agree. We went the same way, and we learned the same way too. I would add from a technology standpoint, because as you're going through the pipeline, you're going to try different things. And we again, because we started way back, we started with Jenkins, and then we found out that the limitations, and then we had to move to Git. So remember when I spoke about how we started, it was a dedicated team, and then we found out that the federation, and almost like the hybrid model Vikul explained before, is the best way to go. So part of that, there is also the risk when you are hybrid that everybody thinks that it's somebody else's job to progress. So kind of you start having this, like they're supposed to do this for us, and we're supposed. So one of the two point that were lesson learned for us to make progress was, first of all, align the PIs. And I'm talking about planning and alignment under the SAFe. This is really when we work on the backlog. So aligning the PI of the platform team, the hub, and also on so when you are working on a similar pipeline, you can see results and you can solve problems together. The second point is really, for example, for things like I'm going to mention like an EC2. I'm going to talk EC2 or an S3 or IDS or DNS. The platform team took it on. We had what we call the agile training, where we trained people from the programs on becoming a DevOps, and that they were trained by the hub team and the platform team. So, but also they learned that these infrastructure, elements and blocks, we call them the Lego blocks, which is really the composable architecture of a DevOps pipeline. They were harder for certain. So they created this whole notion of building the blocks. And then they moved from the infrastructure into building blocks, reusable blocks, even on the application side, and then handing them kind of to the application, to the other parts, and saying, hey, could be used. Same thing we did in quality. So for QA, the CT was a problem for a while. It's not that we didn't have automation, but it's how can we hook up CT? So we created, so the CT also has a hub. So CT also created the Selenium Lego. We call them Legos blocks. So we created the Selenium Lego, and now anybody who has Selenium automation in their application can plug in, and it's easier. So I think, again, we talked about the two aspects. There is the process and the culture, from one side, but there is also the technology, which is big. DevOps is also around playing around with technology and what works for you.
So actually, I would like to add one thing here. So I think for me, bottoms up, top down, both have to happen.
Yeah.
Why? Because you need to be realistic in your expectations. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a discussion where the CIO will say, I was in a CIO conference and everyone is moving to DevOps and I want to move to DevOps and I want to do what Amazon is doing. I want to release every hour. And I'm like, do you need to release every hour, right? Like, so and I think this is also leading to another aspect. DevOps mean different things. It's a journey. Do you need to really go to continuous deployment, or is continuous delivery okay for you? Or maybe not even continuous delivery, continuous testing is, because at the end of the day, what you do in DevOps has to map with your business objectives.
Yeah.
Right? And those will change. 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. This will change. So depending on that, you need to set realistic expectations, because if you go and tell people who are releasing every 6 months, we're going to change and now release every hour and every code you commit will go to production, I'm telling you, you will see a lot of people leave.
True.
Because they'll be scared. So being very realistic on what your goals are for this phase of your journey, and then being realistic on what your end goal is. When will this, what do you expect out of transformation? And like I tell 75 to 80% of the customers I work with don't need continuous deployment. They don't need every code commit to go to production as is. That's a process maturity. And the hyperscalers, the Amazons, the Ubers, the Spotifys of the world, they get it. But for a banking customer, insurance customer, you don't need continuous deployment, continuous delivery would do enough. So I think that to me was another aspect which was very critical, right, for successful DevOps implementation.
Set
Thanks.
clear expectations. Agree.
Thanks, Vikul. I think you got to be realistic and achieve for realistic goals. So thank you. Moving along, right? So the next question I had is about, was there any framework that was used within your organization to baseline DevOps maturity and measure improvements? Faisal, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. So baselining, no. When we started baselining, we didn't really have like a framework in mind. It's very interesting. I think although we had like clear objectives to try and get teams from doing 4-month releases to 1-month releases, right? Like more frequent releases with less effort on the team. We really didn't have like very clear idea about the measurements starting off. And those are things that we've learned over time. What we've learned and where we, I think, are gravitating more towards is the DORA metrics. We want to basically use that to help drive the direction of our success of our DevOps. So now that we have newer teams coming into the program, we're clearly defining the metric based on DORA, which is your deployment frequency. How often are you guys deploying? What is the lead time for change? Any change, how long does it sit in your before it actually makes it into production? And then what is your change failure rate? How many issues are being introduced as you do more and more often? Get your deployments in more and more often. And then how long does it take for you to recover from those issues? So that's going to be the baseline going forward for our new teams that are coming into this program. Mm-hmm. But we also did a slightly different approach, and I think Shri, you've been kind of instrumental in that. We've sort of separated the actual performance of the team from the DevOps maturity of the team. And those are two distinct things. So what we started doing is like when we brought a team in, we did a high level assessment of where we think their maturity level is. And the maturity level is tied to, and I think Shri, you can talk more about this than I can, but are they like aspirational? Are they, foundational? Are they performing?
Right.
And then are they like all the way up to like, are they next gen?
Yeah.
So we use those metrics to really kind of rate the team, not on what they're actually delivering, but what their capabilities are. And we build those capabilities in the team, but they may not be like exercising those capabilities for everything that they do, as they work through the products. And then we started getting into the DORA metrics to try and really start analyzing the throughput of the teams. So those two things, I think, are sort of helping us. The teams continue to mature from their capability perspective, while now we also see how that's reflecting what they're actually producing, which is what the DORA metrics are capturing. So I think that's been our strategy on this.
Thanks, Faisal. I think we introduced the 5-scale maturity model at Multiplan, and what we clearly articulated is what are the capabilities, that the application teams need to absorb to get to a certain maturity level, and then created a framework where they can do a self-assessment and then produce a roadmap of what they can do to get there. What are the things that they need to get to a higher level of maturity by when? right? I think that was very helpful to motivate the
Yeah.
teams.
See,
And I
any
think-
such. Go ahead, Faisal.
Sorry, just one thing on that one. And I think one of the key turning points also was when we enabled the team. So yes, they did the analysis. They say, okay, we're at this maturity level. Now we basically enabled the team to make commitments on how they would advance their maturity level and kind of give them, the control, yeah, as opposed to sort of driving it from outside, which I think is also making a big dent to this.
And that is the key. That is the key, because otherwise it's Faisal pushing it, right? Like,
Yes,
and
right.
Faisal deciding what this team will do, what that team will do. See, in any framework, whether it is something Qualitest has, we have something called QTAP, which is Qualitest Transformation Assessment Platform, basically to enable. But any platform, there are other tools out there in the market. Hygia is a DevOps dashboard, which helps you kind of from a metrics perspective. There are metrics portal. There's plenty. But any such framework or platform, what they should have is the point of departure, which is the baseline. In flight, which is what is the current state? Do you know where you are headed to? And then the point of arrival, which is what is the target state, right, from an organization standpoint. And till the time any framework enables that, that is great. So baselining is done with a one-time assessment on what is your release velocity, what is your different quality metrics, defect metrics, and so on. That's the baseline. And then I think, Faisal, you talked about and she talked about, right, continuous measurement. You need to measure continuously. And one of the challenges I've seen is a lot of people try to do it through Excel sheets. And many times it is perception based rather than really data driven, because you're not connecting to Jiras of the world and aliens of the worlds and others to directly pull. And people will, their perception of where they are is very different than what data would tell you. So you level the playing field by doing data-based analysis, building a dashboard which automatically pulls data from the SDLC tools and giving you a view. And then also enabling individual target states, right? Like for the next 2 quarters, I want to go from 2.5 to 3.5 or 3.5 to 4 and so on. So I think that is critical.
Absolutely.
Shri, back to you.
Thank you. Any thoughts, Bouchra?
The one thing that helped us, and Vikul knows well that we are still struggling with the metric part, and I'm looking forward to DORA. So as much as we understand the DORA process, the devil is in the data. Is how do you streamline the data feeding into? I think everybody is familiar with the formulas and the benefit, but so what we did, we started from backwards. So I started with the release metrics overall, and that's what they were introduced when we automated our release process with Platora. So Platora actually helped us streamline what Vikul was talking about, the different in the spreadsheet. So we were having the same thing, and we still, because there's always somebody using a spreadsheet somewhere. So we used Platora because Platora kind of brings, we use version 1 for our Spring, for our Scrum teams. And then we use ALM and ServiceNow for release and operation and, the whole, the right side of the delivery. So what Platora does in release management is actually it pulls the data from both sides. And with Tableau reporting, it helps us kind of link the beginning to the end. For us, it's been really hard. That what Faisal was, it's amazing, and you guys could share with me how you got there. Just as simple as how long it takes a change. You hear a lot about this metric, like how long it takes a change from beginning all the way to the end. Well, it sounds easy. The problem is how everybody defines the beginning, and everybody will call it and has a different status of it. So what Platora really helped us is by starting right to left, backward, is actually we did clean up around the release because we could manage that through Platora and ALM and ServiceNow. And then we got into the world at the team level, which is really the stories, the features, the starts, the MVP, when it's done, when it's not. The work definition, which is really what we call our requirement, the story and feature, is work defining. How did we do? Did we do it on time? grooming our backlogs and so forth, because all of that gets into defining the when for each phase, which will get into your metrics. So when AI folks and Gen AI talk about how important the data to them, it's, reporting has been the same thing for so many years, is that if your data originally is well set and streamlined, it's much easier to get. And the beauty and the genius of people who have helped and hopefully will help us, like Qualitest, is that help us kind of clean up that data. How can we get there so we can get that view and those dashboard? Because people have metrics on their own. Like each team right now, I'm sure they have their own metrics and they can share a different view. And we're trying to streamline. So Flutura helped us, but we're really looking forward to what Qualitest. I think that was one of the big appeals, and we compared it into the markets and to other vendors, and there is a really good appealing case with Qualitest for that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Bouchra, one thing I do want to add, I think we simplified what this means, right?
Correct.
Simplification is, when did we commit the code, or when did we close the story, and how long now from that point is it sitting before it actually makes it into production?
Yeah, but that when did you commit the code is where we get lost right now again. Yeah. But it's a big bravo. When you get to that, I think that's good maturity.
Yeah, we need some discipline around that.
Yeah.
I think we definitely need discipline in the way we deal with the data that we're capturing within Jira, and then we use like a Qualisense tool, which is something that Qualitest developed for us that gives us those visualizations from that data.
Yeah.
But yes, we have to get really mature in how we're capturing data, thorough about that. If you don't do that, then you're going to get wrong metrics in the end. So that's why the COE group is so important, that when they come in, they sort of establish those norms.
Thank you, Faisal. So I think we have a couple of more important aspects that we want to cover before the end. So one of the things I wanted to ask about is what are the shift left methodologies that were used within your organization to shift quality further left in the process, especially in DevOps transformation? Bouchra, you want to go first?
Where do you start? I breathe shift left. I even use shift left at home with my kids. I think it's the best concept. We did it, I think, in the old days, and I'm not dating myself right here, but in the old days we did it, and we used to call it quality early in. Can we get involved? And it sounded a little bit needy, like we needed to be everywhere. And shift left just came and solidified this whole notion. I give you an analogy that I give my son. If you do things early, you save time for mayhem. And there is an English word that I cannot say for God's help me, which is proxenate. Say it, Vikul. Proxenate. But that's basically what we've been doing for years in the IT world, is that we just push quality and operation all the way to the end. Like we focus so much of the business wants this, and then we're going to just get into the code, and then we will throw everything, and we will complain that QA is late and operation is asking too many questions and security is coming up with vulnerability late. And what shift left kind of mentality came in, just can we start thinking? So what we do, what worked for us to your question, Shrey, is the safe and agile actually framework helps a lot with that. It doesn't give it to you automatically, but you really have to stick to the principles, because that nucleus of, so you have the PI plan, in which is you're supposed to be thinking about everything you need from an infrastructure, from a testing, not just the features that the business brings in. Better work definition and planning ahead of time, planning for risk, planning for the mayhems, for the what if, right? You leave a homework last minute. Imagine you lose power. That's what I tell my son. That happened to him one time. And then last minute becomes no minute, and there is no homework done. So planning for that stuff ahead of time is DevOps just took it and embraced it even at a higher and automated level that really allowed that much upfront. The one thing, and I'm not sure if we're gonna, I think the next or what if, one thing that I still think could use more shift left from DevOps, and maybe it's not DevOps. I think AIs and Gen AI could help. So I'm not jumping ahead. There is that the pipeline in DevOps starts from you have a groomed backlog and you pick it up and you start develop, and then the pipeline takes off. Now there is also a lot of problems that could start and challenges if you don't define your work properly or you don't define your requirement properly. You could have the best pipeline. If your work upfront that entered the pipeline was wrong, you're going to end up and get blocked somewhere. The developer understood one thing, the tester did something, the business completely wanted something else. So that old challenge of are we delivering the swing the way the business kind of drew it and the way we really thought it was in IT is still true. I don't think the DevOps solved that, and it solves a lot of things, but I am an optimistic person. We solved so many things with the DevOps that now we can focus on the work definition. Like right now, what am I spending a lot of my time is how can we help the quality of our work definition upfront? How can we help the grooming, the healthy quality grooming of our backlogs? That's going to lead. But if you enter garbage, you're going to get garbage into the pipeline. That's
so true. That's so true. Actually, if I can weigh in, I remember. So I think personally, if you ask me, after DevOps, shift left is the most abused word in the technical circles. Like every CI would want to talk about shift left, zero rework. These are very common terms. I still remember, I'm not going to name people, but head of QA in one organization when I first, the CIO wanted to do shift left as part of DevOps transformation. And I go, it's like, well, I'm tired of shifting left. One day I think I'll fall off the cliff. I don't understand. I've already brought in Selenium and everything. What do I do more?
Yeah.
At that time, I realized that people don't understand what is shift left. So we actually created one slide to show what shift left means for QA, what shift left means for dev, what shift left means for ops. Now, just from a QA perspective, right? Bouchra, you're so right? Our world, traditional QA, QE, whatever you say, is about writing test cases and executing them and finding defects and then filing them. But we forget in that process that our job, quality is not about just writing test cases. We are the guardians of quality. And quality has an aspect much before code is written, which is requirements. So Faisal talked about conflicting requirement, ambiguous requirement, incomplete requarments. Trust me, right?
Missing acceptance criteria.
Exactly. So in the last, my 24, 25 years of experience, believe me, I've seen and probably I've written myself, right? So requirements which are 3 words. Only 3 words. A typical good requirement would have a persona, an action, and an outcome, right? As an SAP admin, I want to split the database to make it available for something. Persona, action, outcome. 3 words, how do you get it? Only the person who wrote it can deliver it. If a person leaves, if there's a bug or someone enhancement, you're out there in the wild. So what have we done? We have built capabilities where we're able to use AI to look at that requirement, find out whether it is ambiguous, whether it is incomplete, and not just stop at that, right? That is traditional AI will do that. But now we're using generative AI to fix that requirement. One example, a large retailer, they sell everything and they also sell footwear. So the requirement said different footwears. What does different footwear mean? Is it the size? Is it the width? Is it the arc support? Now, LLM was able to do all of that and create a very nice requirement with a very well-defined acceptance criteria. Now, when we talk about shift left, what have we done? 37% of defects we find when we execute our test cases are because of bad requirements. So we've shifted left, finding those much early in the life cycle. Same way performance testing happens much later, but single user performance. Forget about 100 users. Does it work for 1 or 2 users at least? And if it doesn't, you've shifted left. Looking at design, like a lot of people who are adopting AWS and Azure, there are tools there in the market where you scan the code and it will tell you you're not using the APIs right. Why wait for a functional test case or regression test case when you can run that capability now and it will tell you what design issues you have? You're not using the APIs right, or you're using them inefficiently. Shifting left. So whatever that 32, 28, 10% you would have found, later in the cycle, you have found them much earlier. That is shifting left.
Yeah.
Great. Back to you.
Absolutely.
Faisal, I see you smiling. If you have a comment, please.
No,
I would just add, and I'm sorry, Faisal, if I could just plug in security there, and our CISO, my great friend and colleague here, our CISO would love this conversation. Security. I mean, one of the worst bugs that usually developers would hate is a late in the game security or vulnerability defect. Well, static scanning.
Mhm.
Don't wait for your dynamic to find everything. Usually, I don't know. I don't have a percentage, but I'll make it up. You could find 60%. There are spelling, security spelling kind of tools that scan just your code even before you run your static scan. So there's so many available tools and a discipline, a culture of the way you develop. And by the way, I take my hat off to the new generation of developers. Like our QA kind of world, we tend to, but I would really take my hat off to the new generation of great full stack engineers that come. You don't need to sell this, or they come TDD ready, static scanning ready. They come, you get the code as clean as really. Does that mean we don't need QA? No, but QA starts doing the real job that it's supposed to do, and looking for exploring of how business behavioral, business users, usability. There's so many things that the traditional QA has no time of doing because they really have to catch up with what's supposed to be done by other teams. And I was just passionate and I wanted to plug in security.
Absolutely.
I don't have it for that. Sorry, Faisal.
No worries, Bouchra. You stole my point there on the security. I didn't want to inject that in.
You can take my next one.
Yeah. But I also want to say, traditionally when we do our testing and the quality, we leave it till the end. We have this regression, the large regression that happens towards the end. There's not enough time to respond to issues sometimes that you find. Plus something big like that, you also lose a lot of trust in your regression because it's just so massive. It's difficult to maintain and you kind of get used to seeing errors in it. So what's this error? Like you see errors in it all the time. So what is this? What's so different about this error, right? So you get complicit that way. So essentially the idea really is to stick a dynamite into your, in your regression, blow it up, have it move more towards the left and, you find issues early on. That's the whole concept. But the reason why I was smiling a little bit earlier is Bouchra's your wholesome story on how you use shift left in raising your children. When I heard that, I was thinking to myself, anybody who's grown up in the 80s in India in a Catholic school and you have done some kind of mischief, you will be shifted right. And
your parents will do that.
That's a good one. Thank you, Faisal. Now, I think we have only probably one more topic of discussion. Since, Vikul, you touched on generative AI, right? I would like you to share some of your thoughts on how AI can be successfully leveraged to mature DevOps in organizations.
I'll base my answer into two aspects. Classical AI, where you have classification models, prediction models, and then generative AI, two different aspects. But they're not, you pick from one. They're actually complementary to each other. So I'll give you an example. That requirement validation, right? We found that this requirement is not good, but rather than just informing someone or adding a comment in Jira saying this requirement is bad, it's missing this. You know what is missing. Can you fix it? So that's where generative AI is coming into picture. I gave you that footwear example, right? It was ambiguous, but we fixed it because we knew the context from a footwear perspective. LLM model knew what different footwear means. Similarly, if it was for a shirt or for a bat or for a ball, right? Like it would automatically know. So I think that's one aspect. Faisal talked about regression, right? So one area where we use AI is you have huge regression. Now, this regression is a result of years of build-up, right? You build some, then you added some, different people came in, they added some more. We use AI to look at a lot of these test cases and find two things. One, how many of them are exact duplicate? On an average, I find anywhere from 20 to 25% duplicate for a decent organization. For an organization which is not really mature, the number can be 35 to 40%. You'll be surprised. Exact replica, right? The second is similar test cases. They're not exact similar, but it's a variation on what you chose from a drop down or something like that. There, can you consolidate them together? In both the cases, again, LLM models can be used for consolidation purpose. We know that this is the difference, right? Instead of footwear, I selected a shirt, right? But the backend process is the same. Can we merge them into variation and consolidate them into a single test case? That's just another example. Another area where we use classical AI is for, let's say, triaging. When I say triaging, I'm not talking about production defects. Even when you're running your test cases, they fail. And you'll be surprised to find out if you ask Bouchra or Faisal, right? When something fails, most of the time is not spent on fixing it. It is about who do I assign it to? Whose problem is it? It's a multi-tier application. Is it a database issue? Is it a configuration issue? Is it an environment issue? Is it an actual code issue? So we built something called, using AI, called Triage Bot, which will do this root cause classification based on past history. In the past, when a segmentation fault has happened or a disk, like a space issue has been offered, and for this particular API, with this stack trace or whatever, right? This has been the case, so you assign it to that particular group. And within that group, when it was assigned to Faisal, he fixed it in 2 days versus Vikul, who took 5 days. So if he has bandwidth, so not just identifying the root cause, but also identifying the right person to assign it for quicker resolution. Now, these are just some examples. Right? Another example was when a customer was moving from waterfall to agile, 3 months training, and suddenly their world is different. It is about a user story. It is about a story point. It's about retrospection. And one such customer came to us and is like, you know what, we are struggling. Right? They're putting 800 story points because they're scared to put, they don't know what is real. So the first question I asked him, have you done something similar in other LOB? They said, yeah, Java stack, like we are using React and this, similar application, different portal. And we said, okay, give us the data. We learned from the data. And now when a user story is done, before a human puts the story point, there's a story point predictor bot, which will say 80. Now, if it is 80, they can overwrite it and make it 100, but they won't make it 800. Because there's intelligence. We are digitizing what does AI do? AI basically digitizes the knowledge you have in all your data SDLC tools and drives insight and helps you perform better. Now, if AI is helping you do all these smart things, it's enabling you to do smart DevOps. So this is part of your journey. Right? When you have done CI, how do you continuously innovate? You bring in AI. After AI, classical AI, you bring in generative AI, right? And then the next version will be action-oriented AI. So things will keep on evolving.
If I can just jump in, I don't know, Vikul, is that sounds good? You're good?
I think we are at the end of the. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I would like to take the 1 minute and maybe half of it, and I'll give you the other half, so I can address at least a question originally that was asked: DevOps versus AI, and where does AI help DevOps? Do you need? I think the answer that you heard from all of us, you need to have a baseline. if you think of your, for example, if you're going to do CT, you need to have automation as a baseline before you move to continuous testing. This is similar. So you need to have your automated pipeline. AI enhances, brings other tools. So we talked about shifting left to the requirement work definition. AI, beautifully explained by Vikul, will bring those tools and capabilities, which is much needed for a successful, delivery. So we had a pilot with Gen AI in development. It's mind blowing the outcome of how well it clarified the requirement. It wrote the TDDs, it gave it to the it developed it, it tested it. A whole thing from left to right was really beautifully done. So that's the future, that's the thing. But you need to have an automation baseline for AI to work on top of it. AI cannot be plugged in alone. I'm sorry.
Oh, very good point. Thanks for taking the time, Bouchra. This is absolutely right. You got to have the foundational elements in place for AI.
This was our first panel discussion, and when we were preparing, I was sharing with the other panelists that we have a list of 18 questions. I don't think we'll get to even 8.
Yeah.
I think we looked at some of the questions you were asking in the comments, all the participants, and we reprioritized some of those questions, right? Now, if we will try to answer these questions and publish them in LinkedIn. So any unanswered question, we will publish the answers. And if there is sufficient interest, maybe we'll do a series of these panel discussions and continue this and address some of the other unanswered questions you guys have.
Yeah, I got a lot out of this, Bouchra's perspective, and we talk to you, Vikul, and Shri all the time. But I think it's good to get that perspective for somebody who's been doing it for like 3+ years, So appreciate that.
No, I really appreciate all the panelists' time, because it's not just the hour and a half that you spend here today, but you were able to come to some prep sessions with us, work with us through some of the questions we're going to request responses from you, etc. And you spend a lot of time with us. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank the participants today. Without the participants, the panel discussions would not have been very fruitful. So thanks to everybody for joining us today. And we also see a link to a white paper we are releasing as part of this event. Please go through the white paper and send us your comments and feedback. We would really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Shri.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.